Today I'd like to read you a Palestinian folk tale, which can be found in the book Speak Bird, Speak Again, compiled by Ibrahim Mahawi. I've made some revisions and rewordings in this telling, but you can find the full book online to read if you'd like to, and I would highly recommend it. I do apologize for any butchering of Arabic names or words. I tried my best to look up pronunciations, but I wasn't always able to find them. But I really wanted to share this story still, so I will do my best. Personally, I'm very interested in the ways that fairy tales and folk tales echo across cultures and the common elements that appear throughout them, and I particularly like this story because of all the familiar elements in it. If you're also somebody who likes fairy tales and folklore, you might like to listen for the similarities in this story to Beauty and the Beast, East of the Sun, West of the Moon, Cupid and Psyche, and even the Baba Yaga. It falls under the tale type of the bird husband or the bird prince. This is Jummez bin Yazur, chief of the birds. I didn't have a physical copy of this book, so I tried to make my own little homemade one, which I think came out kind of pretty. And I left space in the back so I can add more stories into this little book. Maybe someday it'll be like my own little book of fairy tales. Jummez bin Yazur, chief of the birds. I've never made a book before or tried book binding, so I didn't really have all the right tools and things, so this is mostly held together with hot glue, but I think for my first try it didn't come out too bad. Once upon a time there lived a father, a merchant, with 3 beautiful daughters. The 2 eldest had one mother, while the third had another. She was the youngest and the most beautiful of the 3. Her father loved her very much and had given her the name Sitt el-Husn, the mistress of beauty. When his daughters were grown, the father left to go on a Hajj, the pilgrimage, and asked his daughters what he could bring back to them when he returned. "Name anything you wish, and I will give it to you," he said. "I want a gold bracelet," announced the eldest, "and I want a dress embroidered with the most expensive silk," said the second. I have some gold bracelets here to represent the eldest daughter's wish. to represent the second daughter. I have a length of embroidered fabric. It has some pretty flowers, leaves, and some butterflies. Trace the stems of the flowers. Some leaves. As for me, father, said Sit-Dillisun, I want Jummez ben Yazur, chief of the birds. May your camels collapse in Aqaba, and take not one more step if I should not have him. The father promised his daughters that he would fulfill their requests and went on his way. When he had completed the Hajj, he stopped to collect a gold bracelet for his eldest daughter and a fine embroidered dress for his second. It was not until he began the journey back and his camels collapsed in Aqaba that he remembered his promise to his youngest daughter. Ah yes, he thought, I've forgotten to bring Jummez ben Yazur, chief of the birds. He returned to Mecca and wandered the city, asking anyone he passed about Jummez ben Yazur. Finally he came upon an aged sheikh, who gave him directions to Yazur's house. Go and stand by his door, the old man instructed, and call out 3 times, Jummez ben Yazur, chief of the birds, my daughter has asked for you. The father walked and walked until at last he recognized the house described by the sheikh. It was a very hot day and the man was very thirsty. Seeing a water jar by the door, he reached out his hand to drink. But listen. Take your hand away, said the jar. May it be cut off. You dare to drink from your master's house? The man was quite startled, but quickly recovered. He stepped back and called out 3 times, Jummez ben Yazur, chief of the birds, my daughter has asked for you. After that he headed straight home and had no more interruptions to his journey. He doled out the gifts to his eldest daughters, the bracelet of gold and the gown embroidered with silk and thread, and they snatched them up eagerly. Sit-Dillisun received nothing yet, but she was patient, and her patience paid off. 3 nights after her father arrived home, look, a bird was beating his wings against the window of Sit-Dillisun's bedroom. She sprang from her bed and unlatched the window and welcomed him in. No sooner had he crossed the window's ledge than with a fluttering of wings he transformed before her eyes into the handsomest of young men. This was Jummez ben Yazur, chief of the birds, the one she had chosen for herself, and she fell in love with him instantly. This is one of my favorite little ASMR triggers to do. I have my little bird and just a makeup brush. Every night after that he came and stayed with her, and every morning at dawn he would turn back into a bird and fly away, leaving a purse full of gold tucked beneath her pillow as a parting gift. Her sisters found out, and jealousy crept into them. One day her eldest sister came to her and said, "Ask Jummez what's most perilous to him, where he comes from." Sitt el-Husn, who was innocent of heart, saw no reason to suspect any ill will from her dear sister. And so that evening when he came to her, she asked, "What is most perilous to you where you come from?" "Why?" he asked. "What do you want to know that for?" "Indulge me, please," she said. "I am only curious." And, because he loved her so and could see the innocence of her heart, he told her that the thing that did the most harm to him was glass. If a shard of glass were to cut me, he told her, I would never be able to recover. When she reported the answer back to her sisters, they took the information with glee. They waited until her room was empty, then crept in and broke the glass of her window. That evening, when he came to visit her, Jummez was wounded by the shattered glass when he tried to pass through it. Away he flew, back where he came, while Sitt el-Husn slept on unaware. She waited a day, then 2, a week, then 2. When still he did not return, she realized that the question her sisters asked had been a trick. She knew then that he must be injured and unable to recover, and that she had, however inadvertently, had a part in it all. She vowed to find him and to cure him in any way possible. She donned the disguise of a beggar and set out into the world, wandering from one place to another in search of him, but had no luck. Then one day, while resting beneath a tree, 2 doves landed in the branches above her and began a conversation. "You see, sister," said one, "it turns out Jummez's wife has been wanting to kill him." "If only there were somebody," replied the other, "far be it from my feathers and yours, and my blood and yours, if there were someone who would slaughter a dove, drain her blood, and mix it with the feathers, and then rub it on his legs, he'd get well again." Sitt-el-Husn, hearing this, rose up and was filled anew with hope. She followed the words of the unknowingly hopeful dove and went and found another. She slaughtered the bird, drained its blood, and burned its feathers. She mixed together the blood and the feathers and set off once more, carrying the medicine with her. She wandered the city, calling out, "I am the doctor with the cure." Imagine that these are the feathers of the dove that she used to make the cure. And this bottle holds the blood that she used. One day she passed in front of a certain house, the very house her father had found before her, and listen, there were girls crying by the window. When they saw her, they called her up, saying that their brother was sick and no one had been able to cure him. Sitt-el-Husn came in and found her beloved Jummez in a death-like sleep. She rubbed the medicine into his wounds and stayed by his sickbed, watching over and tending to him day and night for 2 weeks. When at last he awoke, he looked upon her and cried out, "Oh, Sitt-el-Husn, you did me a great wrong." "It wasn't me," she swore to him. "It was my sisters who did this to you. They tricked me, for I would never wish harm upon you." Still seeing only goodness in her heart, Jummez took her into his arms and forgave her. His sisters, however, were still hesitant to let her have their brother's heart. When they discovered that she was his sweetheart and he wanted to marry her, they said to her, "You cannot marry our brother until you have swept and mopped this whole town." She began to weep at the idea of such an impossible task, but Holmes told her not to fear. Go to the top of that mountain there and cry out, "Oh, you there, sweep! Oh, you thing there, mop!" So she went to the top of the mountain and did as he told her, and indeed, the whole town was swept and mopped. Seeing that she had accomplished the task, the sisters said, "You cannot marry our brother until you've gathered enough feathers to fill 10 mattresses for the wedding." She went crying to Holmes, but he said, "Don't be afraid, go again up that mountain, and repeat 3 times, Holmes bin Yazur, chief of the birds, is dead. Then you will have all the feathers you need." Again she went to the mountain and did as he said. No sooner had the words left her mouth than all the birds in the town gathered and started wailing and lamenting, plucking out their feathers in their grief. Soon there were piles and piles of feathers on the ground, and she had only to gather them. She took the feathers and presented them to Holmes's sisters, but still they were not satisfied. "You cannot marry your brother," they said, "until you fetched for us the straw tray hanging on the wall of the Gauli's house." Again she went crying to Holmes, and he comforted her. "Don't cry, for this task too shall be easily done. Go to the Gauli's house, and there you'll find meat in front of the horses and barley in front of the lions. You must switch the meat and the barley so that each animal has the correct feed. You'll also find the terrace by the Gauli's place fallen into disrepair. Put it back to rights, and then you may go into the house and retrieve the tray. But take care, if it scrapes against the wall when you pull it down, the Gaule will hear it and wake up." To the Gaule's house went Sitil Husn to do as Hums had told her. She switched the feet of the horses and the lions and repaired the crumbling stone terrace, but when she went in to take the straw tray, she saw the sleeping Gaule and shook with fear. As she was pulling the tray down, her trembling hands slipped and scraped against the wall, shaking the whole world and waking the Gaule. As quick as she could, Sitil Husn snatched the tray and ran with it, the Gaule following close behind. Stones streaked the Gaule, trip her and slow her dash. For 20 years I've been in ruins, and she repaired me, answered the terrace. I will not do it. Horses, run and block her way, commanded the Gaule. For 20 years we haven't tasted barley, and she fed us. We will not do it. Lions, chase her and catch her. For 20 years we haven't tasted meat, and she fed us. We will not do it. And thus the Gaule was not able to catch her, and Sitil Husn escaped with the tray. She brought it back and presented it to Hum's sisters, and at last they were satisfied that she truly loved their brother. They gave their consent to their brother's marriage, and a joyous wedding celebration was held. Sitil Husn married Hum's ben Yazur, chief of the birds, and he lifted her up and flew away with her. The bird has flown, and a good night to all. This was Hum's ben Yazur, chief of the birds.